Welcome to the Venue Owner series of the Venue Success Podcast. I'm your host, Tirzah, and this season is all about connecting you with venue professionals from across the country so you can hear firsthand the lessons they've learned, the highs, the lows, and everything in between, and what's actually working and what's not. And today I am joined by a fellow veteran in the wedding industry. We share a lot in common, actually. We have Dixie Bagley on the show with us today. Welcome, my friend.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, we've got so much fun content for you today. And Dixie's going to share a little bit more about herself here in a moment. But a fun fact about Dixie is that she just moved to Montana. And every time I see pictures of her posting the view from her house, oh my gosh, I am like, I just got to move out west. But anyway, we were
Mhm.
chatting before that we think that Dixie needs to start her own channel of Real Housewives of Montana. I would definitely watch that.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
I asked Dixie if she would share with us her crazy story. So without further ado, it's time for Crazy Stories with Tirzah and Dixie because people have lost their minds. So I haven't
Yes.
even heard this story yet. Dixie said that this was something that actually happened recently. So tell us
Mhm.
your crazy story.
Yeah, so one of our last weddings last year, we had a very what seemed like a very sweet girl, groom's family paying for the wedding, kind of a sob story on her family end, but anyway, so it was all good, and then she started getting crazy, and I do mean crazy, like, calling, ranting, like, if she called right now and I didn't answer, and we called her back 5 minutes, she wouldn't answer, and the next day, we would get these long text messages that we ghosted her. Um,
Oh my gosh.
and and so, like, and as time went on, this became a pattern with her, extreme, you know what I mean? Like, extreme
Oh,
words, ghosting, abandonment, stuff like that. And so finally, she was late on a payment, reminded
of
her,
course.
and she said, "Well, I didn't
Uh-huh.
pay that because I didn't hear back." And I'm like, "You heard back, you just didn't answer the phone." Like,
Oh
and
my
like we had
goodness.
this chain message because she was high maintenance, so we were talking to her a lot more than what was necessary. But anyway, I warned her 2 times, and the second time I warned her, I got on the phone with the family and was like, "Listen, this kind of behavior is not acceptable." My assistant's grandmother died of cancer, and she said, "My so and so's got cancer too. It's not an excuse." Very just rude. She was violating every possible clause that we had. So I sat down and looked. I was like, "You're in violation right now of 7 clauses in our contract." My contract, fortunately, is so tight. I am
Yep.
protected. But
Yep.
I was like, "If you do this again, I think that we should part ways." And I really didn't want to because the family was really nice. Did I want to do anything else with her? Absolutely not. I didn't want to put anybody through. You know what I mean? Like, if she
Yep.
could be that
Yep.
way via text, there's no telling what was going to happen in person. And she wasn't
Oh my
paying for
goodness.
any of this. You know what I mean? So
Of course.
her level of respect to her in laws was not there either. And they would coddle and say, well, she had a terrible upbringing. There was always an excuse. You know what I mean? And so I told her, I said, this is your last warning. If you do this again, we will part ways. I will refund you
Yep.
your money, give it all back to you. Not a big
Yep.
deal. You know what I mean? We'll go our separate ways. That was in October. Her wedding was in December, scheduled for December. Um, Maybe 3.5 weeks before her wedding, I get a message from my vendor that I paid for her wedding that said, "Hey, I just got a message from her saying that the wedding has been moved to a different location."
What?
And now, mind you, I've not heard anything from her since the last warning where she said, "Yes, ma'am," via text. You know what I mean? And then I talked to her, the mother-in-law who paid, talked to her the next day. You know what I mean? And my mother-in-law was like, "I think we're good. I think, no problems." And so basically, she picked up and moved her place to another venue. We sent her a text message in the group. We have a group Boxer thing, chain message. And she said, "Well, you fired me." And I said, "Well, no, I didn't fire you, actually." I was like, "I warned you because I didn't wanna have to fire you." You and,
Oh my goodness.
and she was adamant. She's like, "You fired me." And I screenshotted the message, you know what I mean, and sent it back to her, and I said, "Nowhere in here it says last warning." So, basically, she went and had her wedding somewhere else. My vendors asked if it was okay. I said, "Knock yourself out. If you're comfortable with it, you know what I mean, like, you're paid, we'll hash this out, like, go. Do it." So they did. Well, then a month after the wedding, and I didn't give them any money back because at this point they've canceled on me. You know what I mean? Like
Yes,
they've
absolutely.
I
Oh,
did.
yeah.
So she had paid over for her extra guest, so I did refund that back because I was like that. I was like, obviously, I'm not going to need that food, so I'm only going to
Yeah.
supply the
Yeah.
bare minimum. So anything she paid over, I refunded the day I saw that she did that. Everything else, I was like, I'm keeping it. I was like, for all I know, this crazy may show up on the day of her wedding at our
Yes.
venue
Yes.
just to stick
Yes.
it to us. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
And
So
you can't resell the date because you don't know if that
no,
may happen, like
no. And
any of
I'd
that.
already
Yeah.
paid the vendors. I already had everything ordered.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so I was like, she's that kind of crazy. She may show up. You know what I mean? Or have somebody show up on her behalf and be like, well, we went to the venue and nobody was even there, you know. So
Uh-huh.
nonetheless, I did not give them their money back. This was a small elopement micro wedding package. Simple. This should have never, you know what I mean, been to this extreme. I get served with papers that I'm being sued. Ironically, by the groom, who I've never spoke to, whose name was not on the contract, but I was like,
Oh,
"Well,
funny. Yeah.
good luck with this," you know.
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
went through and printed everything off and sent it into my attorney, and you know, and a statement from me to the judge because I was already here in Montana, saying that, "Hey,
Yeah.
listen, you
Yeah.
know, I didn't want to fire this girl. I did not want her wedding to be this way, but she continued. I did not cancel her wedding, but being that she did the way she did it, because she could have just said on that last warning, she could have been like, you know what, I can't keep myself together. I'm a bad girl.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm rude.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
saucy. I'm
Yeah.
mouthy.
Yeah.
We should probably part ways. And I would have given her that money back and we would have been happy. But I was like, under the circumstances, absolutely not. She is
Yeah.
not getting
Yeah.
anything back. And so needless to say, I won.
Of course. Yeah,
And it
I'm
was
sure
over.
it was
But
like an open and close like that because they didn't have a
yeah,
leg
it
to
was
stand on.
dismissed. It never even went to court. But I'm just like, oh my, that is crazy.
It
She
is
might talk the
absolutely
crazy.
Yeah. No, and it's wild because people like that, they kind of come out of the woodwork. Like you book with them, you think they're fine, and all of a sudden, several months in, obviously you wouldn't have booked someone that you got a crazy vibe from if you
hmm
were like, I was always really careful about that,
hmm
And people are like, well, how do you get rid of someone if you know from the beginning they're crazy? I just say it right up front.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to be the best fit for your needs.
Right.
And you really deserve to go to a place that is going to be able to give you what you need. And I just don't think that we're the best fit for you,
hmm
from the very beginning. And I know, knowing you, Dixie, you would have done that. But that crazy
hmm
comes out of nowhere. It's like, what in the heck?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh.
I hope that I hope that
People.
they, you know, there's part of me that doubts they'll stay married because of seeing what I saw with her, which is really
Can you
sad. You
imagine
know,
being
as
married to
a,
that?
but I doubt that it's going to work. But good luck. God sending
Good
all my
luck.
prayers to them because he is going to need it.
We'd laugh about that. It was not laughing. I shouldn't say that. But sometimes you sit across the table from people and you're like, yeah, you're not going to make it. You just kind of
Yeah.
know right away.
I
But
normally
all
would
right.
step out of those situations, just so you know, immediately when I'm like in like
Yep.
the beginning stages, and especially if I
Uh-huh.
see friction between the
Yep.
two, then I'm like, you know what, I'm not having anything to do with this. Y'all, good luck.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. You could do that when you're like me and you and we're like
hmm
veterans and we're not like desperate for every little
Right.
client. There's a lot of people that don't have the freedom or the ability to know,
hmm
even the confidence to be able to do that
Yeah.
with someone. But tell us about yourself, Dixie. We recently met actually at a speaking gig. We're both speakers at it, and I popped into your class and I was like, oh my gosh, I've heard of you. I think we've been in the same circles for many, many years, but
hmm
never actually physically met. And so it was really a pleasure to meet you a few months ago.
Yeah.
And I immediately was like, we got to get you on the podcast. So um, tell us a little about yourself. You have many, many ventures. So we probably
hmm
can't hit on all of them, but give us a little
Yeah.
summary of what you do for just fun and for a living.
Yeah, so I'm currently just a wedding business and creative mentor and consultant. So I help people in the creative industry with their businesses. I also help a lot of women who are kind of tired of where they've been. They've been in it for 20 years and they're ready for the next phase. So I help them
Mm-hmm.
transition to that next phase, whether it be just, working once a month remotely,
Yeah.
and spending time with their family or creating an online business. So I do that currently right now. But prior to that was an accidental venue owner for 18 years. And over 800 weddings, and had 8 Airbnbs that turned into a bakery, a wedding planning company, a consulting company. The list goes on, speaking and and everything
Mhm.
kind of evolved from that.
I love that.
Yeah.
And we're gonna talk a little bit later in the show about, the fact that you recently, I think very close to the same time as me, sold your
Mhm.
venue and were able to move into just a different pace of life, which is
Yeah.
really, really exciting. So let's just start at the beginning and talk about how you got into venue ownership. And when
Mhm.
did you kind of start your career as an entrepreneur? And how did that lead you into, you said, accidental
Yeah.
venue ownership? So tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, well, I think I've first of all always been kind of an entrepreneur. I've always worked for myself. I think I've only had, I mean, I've been working, technically working since I was 13. I've only had a boss twice. so, um, it's just kind of always worked out. I've just kind of always found myself in positions where I was in control of my own job, time, money, and I really like it
Mhm.
that way. I don't know that, I don't
Yeah,
know. I don't know that I could ever go back to having a boss
same.
or anything like that.
No.
And if I did, I'd have to be like, "Well, listen, you need to know that I'm gonna be the boss too, okay? Like,
Same,
we're both gonna be
same.
the boss. It's
We
fine."
joke about that in my family all the time, like, I am unhireable.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, and so then, I bought the venue accidentally. I'm very spontaneous. I am a Capricorn, so most people think that I'm not, but when I see something, I just normally sit quietly on it, and then I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna do that." So, I bought the venue. It was supposed to be my personal home, and then, started doing events there just to kinda bring in some income, and then that turned into people wanting me to be their planner and do more just because it was hard to find people, in 2007 and 2008 who were
Mm,
very yes, no, and I was always very fortunate just probably because I grew up with a single mom and having to work for myself. I've always been really quick to say no and, very
yeah,
decisive in my
yeah,
decisions. It's very black and white. So I
mhm.
bought that venue, that farm on a whim. It was going to be my home. Ended up doing weddings, and that turned into in 1 year, turned into 50 weddings, my
Oh
first
my
year.
goodness.
Yeah,
Wow,
with
wow.
8
And you were still
Airbnbs on
living
site.
there while that was
Mhm,
happening?
mhm. Was living there, had kids in high school, middle school, all the things. I was in my 30s. And it was just crazy. So that went on, and rocked on for 18 years. And during that process, just other business opportunities came along. And I kind of looked at them and I thought, well, if they fit within this wheelhouse in this ecosystem
Uh-huh.
of what I'm doing, fine. And if I
Yes.
think I can make profit off of them. So I had a lot of business opportunities come. I did not take them all. But the
Yeah.
bakery made total sense. The local bakery in our town that needed some rehabbing and, new life. Bought that and added that to it. And then the wedding planning company, just kind of naturally evolved. And I would have people who would come to our venue and our venue wouldn't be right for them, but they would go to other venues and they would be like, but I really loved Dixie. Like I really, really liked her and her
Yeah.
team.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I got into us doing more weddings around town and everything. And then we ended up going
Would
full
you go do
service.
those weddings, or would you had employees that did
I
that?
always went the first time just to kinda, like, make sure that the owners were okay with it, because anytime the owner found out that it was me, they were a little hesitant, and I get it.
Yeah.
I am definitely different. Rome's a small town, very close-knit, and a
Yeah.
lot of people in Rome are from Rome. I'm not from Rome, even though I'd lived there for a long time. I stayed in
And
my
we're
circle
talking
of work.
Rome, Georgia people.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, and so I stayed in my circle of work, so, I think I was intimidating to a lot of people and,
Mhm.
standoffish, which I'm really
Yeah.
not. I just, keep my head down and focus on my stuff. I don't worry about other people's business. But so I would always go to the venues first. I would introduce myself and be like, "Hey, are you okay with this? I promise I'm going to do a great job. I'm a venue owner. I'm going to make your life so easy and probably teach you a few
Yes.
things." And,
Yeah.
and after that, it was fine. Like it just became repeat weddings. And then my crew would go after that.
Got it. Got it.
Mm.
So did you just start your wedding planning business from scratch based upon kind of your brand and all of that, or was it a different brand that you bought, like a wedding planner that
Nope.
was like, I'm selling my okay.
I started from scratch, yeah. There's only in
Mhm.
Rome, there was only one other company that was a wedding planning company, and then you had a couple of independent people who, you know what I mean, like church
Yeah.
planners. Nothing wrong with
Yeah.
y'all, don't get mad at me, don't come for me, but it is different.
Oh, yeah.
And so,
Absolutely.
people
Yeah.
who are like, "Oh, I do a baby shower at a church once a year, and therefore I'm a
Precious.
planner." Yes, and I'm like, "Okay, girl."
Yeah, bless your heart.
Mhm. Yeah. I go to
So one
church. That doesn't make me a preacher, okay? Just saying.
that's so funny. So one of the things I heard you talking about at the conference when I popped into the room where you were speaking for a few minutes, you were sharing about the fact that one of your specialties was doing these micro weddings and how you
Mhm.
would have multiple in a day. I think there's a lot of listeners that would be very interested to hear about. I know we didn't plan to talk about that today,
Yeah.
but if you just want to hit on that for a few minutes, because I feel like there are a lot of people that are interested in the micro weddings. And I'm always really, just so you know my perspective about it, I'm always really hesitant with people about that if they're, especially if they're all inclusive and they do food and beverage in house and they're trying to get the most bang for their buck selling a 25-person event on a
Mhm.
Saturday night. Like, be careful about that. You know,
Mhm.
there are bread and butter dates that you need to be careful of, and just the way that you implement micro and elopements into your venue is a little bit different.
Mhm.
And so I would love for you to share um, how you handled that at your venue.
Well, I came up with that on a whim. I was cutting grass when I came across, had this brainstorm that I had a couple canceled. Ended up getting pregnant and they had an all weekend rental with me in October, prime date. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, y'all can't cancel. You've paid money. Like you have something. And they were like,
Yeah.
"No," it's just like their attention shifted to this baby, which is wonderful. But they just totally, you know what
Yes.
I mean? Like money wasn't an option. They didn't care. They were just like, whatever, bye. Never
Yeah.
heard from him
Yeah.
again, and then I got excited. I thought I'd go on vacation for that weekend, and I was like, "That's dumb. I can't go. I've got" you know what I mean, weddings every
Yeah.
weekend.
Yeah. Yeah.
October, that was back in the day when going out in somewhere in October was unreal for me in the South as a wedding
Uh-huh.
planner and venue owner.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I was cutting grass one day. I was like, what if I could just see is how many elopements I could do in one weekend and just drive people through here and just do it, and like it'll be
Yep.
fun. I always start out,
Yep.
it'll be fun. Yeah.
It'll be easy. It'll be
It's
fun.
fine.
No big
From
deal.
the lawnmower, it seems so easy. Um, so, so I think that was like in June that they had canceled for an October wedding, and I created this elopement package, 2-hour slots. And so I had 20 for the whole weekend. And
Oh
I
my
threw up
goodness.
this little thing, got a photographer arranged. I had one of my assistants who was also ordained. So he was going to do, all the ceremonies. I was doing all the flowers and my bakery was doing all the cakes. I put it out there on Facebook, flew to Mexico that morning. By the time I landed and got back into customs and could cut my phone on, my phone was on fire. 75% of those were already booked. I'd put up a link to Venmo to pay. It was $2,000 per couple. Put up a link to
Jeez.
Venmo and they like paid and went on there and looked. My Venmo got shut down because all that money coming through so rapidly. And but I
Yeah.
created that package so tightly, and I put on there are no exceptions. It is this: you've got
Yep.
2 hours, you get this
Yep.
cake, you get a bouquet, you get a boutonniere or 2 bouquets and 2 boutonnieres, whatever, you know what I mean.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
You get your officiant, and you have a photographer that is going to give you 25 edited images.
Yep.
And that
Yep.
was it. There was no
Yep.
wiggle room, no alcohol, no food brought in, no nothing. Like we're
Mhm.
coming in, you're getting your dress on, taking some photos. We're going to do the ceremony, and then we're going to go do a first dance, cake cutting, and a cake style reception. Then we're doing a bubble and flower petal exit and goodbye. Next people are rolling in, and I
That's
did it.
wild. And was there a max on how many people they could have?
They could only have 30 people.
Mhm.
And that was another thing, you know what I mean? Like people were like,
Mhm.
"Can I? Can I?" And I'm like, "You like
No. Yeah.
if two go over, fine." But I'm like, but I was like, we had the timelines done, so when everybody got their timelines sent out, it had their arrival time. We're like, "You cannot pull in this gate before 1:30. Your pull in time is at 1:30,"
Yep.
because we knew
Yep.
we would have the next group going out of 30 people. And so it was like as the people were going out, people were pulling in, and I did have somebody stay at the gate and make sure, you know what I mean, so we didn't get people hanging out, and that they were hanging out in the parking lot. We're like, "You got to go."
Yep.
You
Yep.
got to leave.
Yep.
And I mean,
Yep.
and everybody was thrilled with it and happy. And of course, I made a ton of money in one
Yeah.
weekend. I was done by 7 o'clock at night, every night. I mean,
Whew.
and then, after that, it was just like, oh my gosh, like if I could do this once a month. the
Uh-huh.
revenue I bring in once you know what I mean, on this,
Yes.
th
Yes.
I don't have to book every weekend, I mean,
Uh-huh.
like, and
Uh-huh.
so it really started my wheels turning and looking at the numbers and picking out certain dates for the next year, and I didn't even have to do that. I had people beating my door down after that for these dates. They're like, "When is gonna be your next elopement date?" And then I went into the micro weddings where I would do 2 a day, all inclusive, same thing, but they would have a meal, 50 people max. Um no alcohol unless it was just a champagne mimosa bar, nothing else. So
Yep.
I kept it really simple and like there were you couldn't really budge on anything like that. You couldn't budge on the
You
rules.
can't. Yep.
And that's
Yeah.
the way to do it. And that's why the girl I was talking about, the nightmare, she was a micro wedding and she was trying to
Mhm.
budge and budge and budge. And she originally was an elopement. And then we had to go up to a micro wedding because she wanted more. And even then she was, you know what I mean? Like constantly
Mhm.
trying to get more.
Mhm.
And I'm not mad that it ended as my last
Yeah.
micro wedding of
Yeah.
my career.
Yeah.
but,
Oh my
but,
gosh.
but
Isn't
I
that
mean,
funny?
they were great and they were really profitable. I mean, we got to work. And also from a venue standpoint, it was a phenomenal way for me to train my staff to be able to handle big weddings by themselves because they would start out with an
Yes.
elopement. Like
Yes.
one girl can go in and she can officiate, make your bouquet, put
Mhm.
your cake out, you know what I mean, and handle 30 people for
Yep.
2 hours. And then we graduate up to the 50 people and maybe two
Yep.
assistants working that. And then they're on to those all
Yep.
weekend weddings. They're ready. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They are trained at that point.
No, I love that. So how did you decide when you were going to have elopement weekends or micro wedding weekends like that? How often would you do that in the phase of a year
So
cycle?
yeah, so I would do that. Right after that, I immediately switched and I did it once every quarter. And
Okay.
so I just would pick a date, you know what I mean, that worked. And most commonly, I would look at dates that were the most popular dates, like that people would ask for, like 10, 10, 20. You know what I mean? Like
Oh,
that's the
I
date that,
remember that. Yes,
like that
yeah.
date was booked 4 years ahead of time. And I got to thinking, I was
And
like,
then we
good
had to cancel them
gracious.
all. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, good gracious. Had I
Yeah.
just, you know what I mean, done a bunch of micro weddings or elopements that day, I would have
Yep.
killed it. You know
You
what I
could
mean?
have
Because everybody wants that. Like 420. A lot of people like to get married on
mhm.
420. So looking at dates like
Mhm.
that and even like sometimes on a weekday, like Valentine's, I mean, that was popular because
Yep.
there are people who want to come in. That's great for like I say a short and sweet elopement where it's like
Mhm.
$500 and just a couple comes with maybe their kids or maybe their parents and they get
Yeah.
married at our big beautiful venue and take their own photos and go. You know what I mean? And we're not
Mhm.
doing anything.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I figured out ways to open it up based on the day of the week and what would work. And it was nice because I got to have clients that I wouldn't normally get because I had such a big venue and such an expensive venue. That a
Yes.
lot of people didn't get to experience. And there were a lot of people who
Yeah.
came to me and toured my venue, and it broke my heart because I knew they did not have the money to have
Oh,
my
yeah.
venue. And so once I
Yeah.
turned that around and I found a way to be able to make space for everybody, that I
Yeah.
liked, that I felt was
Yeah,
a good
exactly.
choice,
Yeah.
a good choice for us, it just was really rewarding.
I love that. And when you're doing a tour to be able to say, like if this doesn't work for
Hmm.
you, not that you would offer that to everyone, but it's like we
Yeah.
do have this
Yeah.
coming up in 6 months. We have our next, whatever. So
Hmm.
how would you define you touched on it a little bit, and I'm asking this for the sake of people listening that ask me this question a lot too. What's the difference between an elopement and a micro wedding to you? Because I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of people define this differently.
So for me, an elopement is like a 2 hour window. And really, I mean, and for us, part of that hour 1 hour was their 30-minute load in and 30-minute load out, getting into their dress, getting some of those detail shots, and then a 1 hour ceremony. You take a bite of cake. 50% of them did not take the bite of the cake. They would take it with them because
Yep.
they were going somewhere after. So for me, an elopement is strictly that. Just come in, get married. If you want to do a first dance, exchange a bite of cake and have your 30 people watch and leave and get your photos. And then we also would have people who would just come in and do that and like not and have people stay just for the ceremony and they would use the remainder of their time to have photos at the venue.
Mhm.
So for me it
Mhm.
didn't matter, but to me that's an elopement. A micro wedding is basically a wedding, full wedding, but on a smaller scale in a shorter time period. So our micro weddings are 5 hours and a meal for
Mhm.
50 people. And when I say a meal, like it's not a catering company, it's coming from like a restaurant, drop off catering like Olive Garden or
Yep.
Bellaroma or stuff like that.
Mhm.
I mean, and so it's just a
Mhm.
very kind of casual, laid back wedding, but they're still getting the benefits of having that beautiful venue and all of that kind of stuff without having to do it in their backyard, so to speak.
I want to give a little warning to people listening to this, and you're thinking, oh my gosh, that's the best idea. And you're new to the industry. You have a hard time saying no. Like, you don't have even good structure around your current packages to begin with. Listen, this may seem easy, but it's not. And I say that like it's easy for me and Dixie, right? But what's not easy about it is keeping people within the parameters of what Dixie is saying. If she had said, "Hey, I'm doing this, but making exceptions for 20 weddings in the course of one weekend," it wouldn't have been enjoyable. It wouldn't have been easy. She wouldn't have been telling you what she is now if she had just let
Mm-hmm.
it kind of go haywire. So all I'm saying is if you are listening and you think this is a really great idea, just understand you have to have clear expectations from the very beginning
Mm-hmm.
about what this looks like and don't make exceptions. Um, Once you start doing that, it opens Pandora's box. That's just what I have
Yes.
learned in 33 years doing this is that especially in situations like this, you can't feel bad by being strict about it because also you're giving them a heck of a deal. And so
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to feel bad about
Yeah.
sticking to your rules about that. So,
Yes.
um, yeah. And one of the things that I think is really, really cool about this is the fact that what you said, and I'm so glad that you mentioned that, is that you're able to serve a totally different demographic of
Mm-hmm.
people to be able to use such a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
space that they never would have been able to use otherwise. I think it's really special. So
Yeah.
well
Yeah,
done.
there were couples who, like, went to school with my children who,
Yes.
bless
Yes.
them, were not near as fortunate as us. Their families weren't
Yeah.
as fortunate, and you know what I mean? And if
Yes.
and to say no to someone that my child went to school with, who I was on the PTA with, and who I was at the
Yeah.
library
Yeah.
with them in elementary school or in Boy Scouts, that would have really sucked. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
My
Yeah.
mom
No, I do. Yeah.
that would have really hurt my mom heart, and also it would have
Yeah.
changed the
Yeah.
dynamics of what they thought about me, Miss Dixie, from elementary school. You know what I mean? They would have been
Yes.
like, "Oh, we don't like her anymore." But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
glad that didn't happen. But yes,
Yeah.
you have to be excellent at saying no to do this, and you have to have an excellent, well-oiled machine already working for your venue, and you have to have a great team behind you, and
Yes.
timelines, and all the vendors, all the people. It's
Yeah.
all the magic coming together, and
Mhm.
everybody sees everything the same way, and they feel the same
Mhm.
way about it.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah.
And, being able to, and not everyone is going to be able to put it out there and have 20 people sign up like what you had. You
Right.
obviously had a great reputation, great social following, like you had a
Mhm.
lot going for you with that. There was something I did and it was a little bit different, but I got some local news channels and things involved because we did a wedding for a veteran on Veterans Day. So that's another idea. And it was a micro wedding. And so there's some things that you could do where it's like, strategically to
Mhm.
get some visibility at your venue too. And that is another really
Yes.
cool way that you could do that. Like have an application for people to tell their story and that you're going to
Mhm.
get all of these vendors together and maybe potentially even donate a wedding just for the sake of also just getting eyes on your venue too. And
Mhm.
that's another thing. Like we don't have to hit on this a lot, but it's like you also had 20 groups of people coming to your venue that would have not otherwise seen it as well. And so
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
great publicity around that. Like your socials must have been insane those weekends.
Oh,
So
yeah, it
there's
was.
some really cool stuff. And if you're thinking, oh my gosh, this is such a great idea, think about it for 2027. Really, at
Mhm.
this point, it might be a bit too late unless you are actually already a really well oiled machine and you're like, how is it that we have this great date in November still open
Mhm.
and you want to try it out? I think that that would be totally fine. But don't, if you're not a well oiled machine, plan for 2027 if you're going to do that. That's just my unsolicited advice.
Well, and
But
I tell people this too, like, this sounds crazy, but I could have done that weekend by myself had I given my couples 3-hour time slots. So, and the reason I'm saying that is because that says something about me and the way I work and the way I am when
yeah,
I'm in work mode. Not
yeah.
everybody's like that. Like, I'm
No, they're
hyper
not.
focused when I'm in work mode, and I don't
Yep.
stop. I don't eat. I don't. check my phone. You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm not
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And so unless
Yeah.
you are that type of personality too, it's really, really hard. Like the 2 people that I had help me that weekend, had I not been there, their focus could not have handled
No.
the capacity of what we were doing.
No, no, no. Yeah, and it would
So,
definitely need to be one of those things where, you're not leaving this to your day of coordinators or
mhm,
your assistant. I mean, it needs to be all hands on deck because at the end of
mhm,
the day, it's a really big revenue maker, and you need to make sure that you're there to make sure it
yeah.
goes well. You mentioned something about your kids growing up, in the venue, living at the
Mhm.
venue. Tell me about what that was like for them. Uh Did they resent it? Were they employees of yours? What was that like for them?
They would help every now and then, with stuff. I mean, mostly like my son was in high school at the time. He ended up kind of, jumping in and filming a wedding because if a videographer didn't show up, and he used to make fun little kinda like he used to make, like, the Jackass style videos of he and his friends
Uh-huh,
longboarding and
uh-huh.
stuff like that,
Yep.
and so we had a videographer not show up, and I went and I was like, "Oh my god," I was like, "Please help." I was like, "This girl's in tears, like, she will pay you $2,000, just come up here and film her wedding and piece it together." You know what I mean? Like, to a good song, whatever. He did it, knocked it out of the park, ended up, in his high school senior year filming, I think, like, maybe 25 weddings, and then ended
No
up changing his
way.
trajectory of his career to digital media. He was on the flight path to fly airplanes, ended up changing to digital media, went to Georgia Southern, relaunched their digital media program, and now works for Roblox and makes video games. So it did, you know what I mean? It
I
changed his
love
path
that.
and his trajectory.
Yep.
My daughter was an athlete in middle school and high school during that time. So she was always basketball, softball, volleyball. She was a pitcher. She was always so busy. So she would come up sometimes and like help me put tablecloths on, you know what I mean? And do stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And then our youngest son, as our son, it's my husband's son. So he would go back and forth between his moms. I mean, he's my son, but he wasn't theirs often,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
do stuff like that. But as far as like, I think, for like my son, he was in a lot of rooms with a lot of girls getting dressed.
Oh, no.
So I will say this.
How did you handle that?
Oh, it was so funny because a girl later on, after a couple of drinks, she'd be like, "Your son saw my boobs." And I'm like, "That's fine." She's like, "No, but he's your son." And I'm like, "He's fine." Like, it's fine. But they would feel so weird, and they're like, "How old is he?" And I'm like, he's old
It
enough,
doesn't
don't worry.
matter.
It's fine. Like, it's
He's
you know what I
legal.
mean? Like, not his first rodeo, and stuff like that. But, so I think it was more jarring for some of them to realize, that they were around my child and would say things and be drinking, mimosas, White Claw wasted in front of my son and a
Uh-huh.
boob out.
White claw wasted. It's a thing. It is a
Yeah,
thing.
at 10 in the morning, yes. And
Uh,
so but he's a great kid. He's always been so respectful of women. He was that way beforehand. He's been a 40-year-old his whole life. And,
yeah.
and it
Yeah.
gave him a lot of perspective on, like, what he wanted for his wedding. He eloped in Oregon outside on the beach with the Goonies rock in the background.
I love
Amazing
that.
wedding. And
Mhm.
I mean, and I think for all my kids, my youngest son just got married. He did the same thing. He eloped. They had a big party at the venue afterwards, but they eloped
Common, by
just by
the way, for
themselves.
venue owner kids. Very
Mhm.
common.
Yeah, and my daughter, she doesn't care. She's not married yet, but
Yeah.
she's just like, when I do get married, I just want to make sure I have the dress that I want and the flowers that I want. And she was like, nothing else is really that important to me. Like,
Yep. Yep.
so I think it really gave them perspective and it made them appreciative of the real reasons and what's really special about getting married, where we have, and we have so many couples who
Yeah.
come in and get married and they're not, it's sad because they're not realizing that this is a special moment and they're getting worked up over things that do not and should not matter. Um,
Yes. Yes. Yes.
and it's disheartening to see. And so I'm so proud that my kids don't have that view and they see it as, what you're marrying. This is about marriage. This is about two people coming together. And if you get to share that with somebody else, great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. No, that is so well said. So, so well said. I'm curious, honestly. My kids aren't married yet, but I mean, I grew up in a venue since I was a little kid, and I knew that I wanted to do it differently for my kids. So I
Hmm.
never lived at the venue. That was a big, big, big thing for me, is that I did not want to sleep where I work.
Right. It's
And what
hard.
that would be for my it's very hard. It's very, very hard. I mean, I know it. I lived it. So that was a big thing that we did that my kids were always very, very grateful about. And people would always ask us, "You have this huge, huge house with all of these rooms and all this stuff." And I'm like, I purposefully ripped out all of the beds so that it wouldn't even be tempting. And I gave everyone their own office and a bedroom because I'm like, I don't even want to be tempted to
Yeah.
live here. But our kids put up with a lot. It is
Mhm.
not an easy way to grow up. It's not. Mom's gone a lot, dad's gone a lot. It's just late nights, all of the things. So
Yeah, it is good though, I think, to have our kids grow up in hospitality. I think that
I
speaks
do too.
volumes into the
Yeah.
way they move in the world and the way they
Yes.
respond to people and the level of respect, you know what I mean? And also just being so well-rounded to be around that many people, all the
Yeah.
time, to all the different
Yeah.
people that they came across and random people accidentally showing up in our house because they thought our house was
Yeah.
the venue and they're like, "Hey, I'm here for breakfast."
Oh my
And like
gosh.
yeah, and our kids being nice
Yeah.
to them and so on.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
I
I
think that's
love
a good
that.
part of that.
Yeah, for sure. And being willing, as you're saying that, I was thinking, hospitality is not a glamorous industry for the most part, right? And so, my son was a dishwasher at our venue, and he managed training all the boys that came, and we call them our dish boys. And he, grew in leadership in that
Mhm.
area where he was willing to, scrape garbage off of plates and do a
Yeah.
very unsexy job and
Mhm.
and did a great job at it, and my
Mhm.
daughter too. Like, they were in the weeds doing gross things, and it wasn't like, oh well, my mom's the owner, so I don't have to do that
Yeah.
particular job. They were willing to get their and wanted to get their hands dirty doing that. So
Mhm.
um, let's talk a little bit about the fact that you recently sold your venue. And um, a lot of people actually have asked me about this. I recently talked a little bit about my story in the podcast of selling and kind of what led me to that point. What led you, because your business was obviously still successful.
Mhm.
Why did you want to sell? Like, what was going on in your life that you felt like it was time to do that? And um, yeah, share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, about maybe 5 years ago, I decided that, for my own livelihood a flashback, I told you I had an emergency hysterectomy. Prior
Yes.
to that,
Yeah.
that was 12 years ago. So prior to that, I'd had a cancer scare. So this has been an
Yep.
ongoing process of like what had
Mhm.
led me there. And then I fell skiing and fractured my neck. And
Mm.
and the whole time I was going back to work between all of this stuff. You know what I mean? All these health scares and all these things that were going on with myself. I was like, hurry up and do whatever you gotta do to me, doctor. I gotta go back to work to this
Yep.
run this venue.
Yep.
And I was
Yep.
like, this venue is running me and owning me. And I
Yep.
just
Yep.
realized I was like, especially after the emergency hysterectomy, because that could have been detrimental had I not gotten to the hospital when I did. But I was
Yeah.
just like, it just dawned on me. I was like, and I knew that the first time around when the cancer happened back in 2004. I knew then, you know what I mean? But just all of a sudden it was compiling. And I was like, life is too short and I've got to like enjoy my life some. I've worked, like I told you, since I was 13. I did not have the luxury of having parents who took care of me. So I've always had to take care of
Yep.
myself. And that
Yep.
wheel of spinning and doing all the things, like, you know what I mean? Just the
Yep.
rock keeps
Yep.
rolling, and and for
It does.
me, it
Yeah.
kept getting bigger. It wasn't getting I mean, like my business,
Mhm.
every time the rock rolled, it got bigger and better, more things
Yes.
incorporated,
Yes.
and I
Yeah.
was fine with it, like, I was adjusting and rolling
Mhm.
with the punches, but, it just gave me
Mhm.
a perspective to go, "When is it enough?" And
Yes.
then I did our
Yeah.
financial planning and did my will and stuff like that, and that shed some light on things, just seeing everything
Yes.
on paper because 'cause I'd been so caught up in the sauce of working so hard because I've just
Yeah.
always been in that survival mode of being a child with no parents to pay for me and having to pay my own way. And I think I was so caught up in that I was never really slowing down to look. But then when I did the financial planning and looking at it on paper, and I was like, holy shit, I've done fine. I'm good. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
not
Yeah.
starving. I'm okay. My kids are going to be okay. Like, if I
Yes.
don't, I'm fortunate that if I don't ever work again, that like I've done good.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and so
Yes.
that gave me some perspective, and I was like, I'm going to start going on vacation more. And I'm going to start doing things more. So I started going to Mexico, and I'd spend like a month in Mexico at a time. 3 or 4 times a year. And each time it got longer or I'd go back more, you know what I mean? And then
Mhm.
alternating with Montana coming here.
Mhm.
And I always wondered in the back of my brain when I would be doing a wedding, I'd be like, "When is it gonna what if I wake up tomorrow and I hate this?" Like, and
Yes.
I'm
Yes. Yeah.
trapped. Like, I was scared of
Uh-huh.
that. You know what I mean? Like, I was
Uh-huh.
scared of, like, waking up tomorrow and being like, "I hate this. I don't ever wanna
Yes.
do it again,"
Yep.
and
Yep.
having no choice but to have to do it. So, it kinda gave me perspective to go ahead and take a
Mhm.
step back and start leaning out of that, and so
Mm.
that I wasn't so attached to it. And one of the first things I had to do was remove myself from the website because so many people associated the farm and Dixie so close together that people would come to the farm and expect to see Dixie. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just because
Yes.
for so
Yes.
long I did it by myself, and that scared me too because I was like, I've painted myself into a very successful corner, but it's a corner nonetheless. And
It is.
there's
Yes.
a
Yeah.
reality that people come in there and going, well, if she's not going to be here, I don't want to have my wedding here because
Yep.
I was a
Yep.
security blanket for people. And even after I stopped and
Mhm.
my assistants would do it, they would be like, well, are you going to be here? And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'll
Yeah.
be here. I'll be at my house." But and I realized even then, I was a security blanket for people, for clients,
Yep.
you know what I mean? Even
Yep.
for my workers. And I was like, for everybody to do good, for my crew to do their best job, I need to not be here. And they have got to step up to the plate and they've got to do this and do it to
Mhm.
my standards. And
Yes.
everybody
Yep.
needs to be happy. And the same for
Yep.
my clients. And I'm like, if my clients really want my venue, they need to be okay without me being here. And if they really love me and the trust, they need to know that I'm here wherever I am watching on this computer and going to still make sure that, you know what I mean, their
Yes.
wedding's good, but I'm
Yeah.
not moving your chairs anymore. And I'm not walking
Yep.
around the street working
Yep.
a 16-hour day. You can't afford me for that.
Yes. Yes.
And so,
Yep.
yeah, I just kind of really, got to thinking about that. And I just started stepping away from it and distancing myself a little bit more from the venue and
Mhm.
everything. And I think it was about 2 years ago, I was out here. I spontaneously bought a house here. I had no plans. I drove down the road and saw this house and I was a for sale sign and I pulled in and made an offer that day.
Oh my
Cash
goodness.
closing, like
Yep.
just this, and that's the
Yep.
same way I bought the farm too, by the way, a long time
Yep.
ago.
Yep.
When I'm
Yep.
spontaneous and I feel it's right,
Yep.
I'm just like,
Mhm.
it's right. Um,
Yep.
and so, after doing it, I was like, and being out here and realizing that I was like, I'm pretty sure I want to live here. Like, and so
Mm.
I decided to just put the farm on the market and just see what happened. And I was like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. You know what I mean? We'll just keep going. Jesus take the wheel.
Yeah.
And it worked. And, and I'm fine with it.
So let's talk about this because I know I'm gonna get a bunch of messages about this. Where did you list it? Did you list it publicly?
No.
How did you handle that? Okay.
Well, it's
Of
a
course.
300-acre
Yeah.
estate. So, it was an
Mhm.
estate. We had 2 barns, 8 guest cottages, 2 houses, you know what I mean? So, it was a
Yep.
lot. So, and also, it was my home also. And also there was a real concern about, the protection and like taking care of my
Of your
clients. I didn't
clients.
want them to
Uh-huh.
freak out about that. So,
Oh,
I did
yeah.
a private listing with a big brokerage that
Yep.
specializes in just like estate properties. And I
Yep.
had them, and I had to think real hard. I was like, am I selling just the property or am I going
Or
to
the
sell the
property and
farm?
business.
Yeah. And I
Oh, got
really,
it. Mhm.
and so I decided that I would put it out there for sale as just the property. And if somebody came in and they wanted to buy it as a property for themselves, fine. But if they wanted to come in and buy it as a wedding venue, they would have to talk to me, and then we'd go from there on what that would look like. I had several people look at it that did want a wedding venue, and they wanted me to come on and work for them for a while,
No.
and I was like, "That's not gonna work."
No. No.
And then, and even with that, like, the farm roamgeorgia.com is the website and the name and everything like that. Like, it became famous and synonymous. Like, it's a European barn venue. There's not another
Mhm.
true European barn. Wood, it's not metal siding, it's brick, it's chandeliers, it's wood, it's stunning.
Yeah.
But I was like, that every bit of that reputation was tied to me. And I was like, if I sell this name to somebody, you know what I mean? And they
Yes. Yes.
don't do their due diligence. I mean, for 2 or 3 years, people are still going to think it's me. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
that has it.
Yep.
And so,
Yep.
and that was something I wasn't really sure that I could put a price on that. You know what I mean? And what that
Mm.
price, and also going back to it, like, do I need a price on it? Did I really like, when is it enough? You know what I mean? Like, yes,
Exactly.
money would have, for that would have been nice. But at the risk of my reputation in the wedding
Mm,
industry, I don't know
yeah.
that I could find a price on that. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I just, I didn't make it easy, obviously, for the people
Mm,
who wanted it as a wedding venue. Um, and they would come to look, I'd be like, "No, I will consult you, for a couple of months, but it will cost you this amount of money." And I
mhm.
just never really felt good about giving the name up, to
Yeah.
somebody else with that property. I'm not opposed to selling it,
Yes.
down the road to somebody else at a different property because I own all the domains. I've owned them forever. So
Yeah.
anytime you look
Yeah.
for a farm venue in North Georgia, it goes to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
because the algorithm, but right now, and at that time, it just wasn't something I was ready to do. But the person who bought it, I'm so fortunate. He wants to raise his children there, and he's just a young guy who's done really well in life and wants to have a big estate, and he wants to grow his own food and cattle, and you know what I mean, and have a
Mm.
life out there in his own little
So they're not
ecosystem for
gonna
his
do
children.
weddings.
Mm-mm. Nope.
That's that's awesome. Good for
Yeah.
him. That's
Yeah.
really, and I'm sure that feels really good for you too. In some ways, like I could tell you, like having people take over my venue and not do a great job has hurt me deeply,
It's
and
hard to
hearing
watch.
things. Oh, it is very hard. And even seeing
Mhm.
like things in Facebook groups that I'm still in and people are saying stuff and I feel embarrassed because I'm like, does the community know I don't own it anymore?
Yeah, you
Most
wanna get
don't.
on there and yell and be like, "I don't do
I
it
want
because
to
I'm
be
me."
like, it's not me. It's not me. And I have been so tempted. I've written many a messages and deleted it because I'm like, no, it doesn't matter. I just have to swallow my pride a little bit. But when you say that,
Mhm.
I completely resonate with what you're saying because I am a name in Charlotte. Like people
Mhm.
know, and it's like it's hard. So I appreciate and totally respect what you did. And yeah, you could have gotten more money for sure, but I didn't
Oh, yeah.
have 300 acres to sell. I had 6. So
Yeah.
it was a little bit of a different situation. Like I needed to sell my business. But no, it is, a lot of there's even just today before we got on our call, I had another venue owner messaging me saying, Tears, I just really want to talk to you about what that process was like. And so that was one of the big reasons why I invited Dixie to be on today. And I know she's a wealth of information. For anyone that is also looking to sell your venue. Not that we have all of the answers and every situation is different, but there are some lessons that I know that she and I both learned along the way that would be helpful for people thinking about selling. And I think one of the biggest fears that people have, and it's valid, is not wanting to alert your booked clients
Mhm.
and them randomly seeing your name pop up on realtor.com is not a smart idea. And so there are ways to be able to list privately. There are even ways that you could list a property without naming it, and they have to sign an NDA before they look at it. And there's all kinds of
Mhm.
things that you can do. And so if you are in that situation of wanting to do that, I know both Dixie and I consult on this. And so we will definitely, in our show notes today, give you a way to contact Dixie. It's not free, people. Don't ask her for free advice. Don't ask her. Um, so I just really am so grateful for you sharing a little bit of your
Yeah.
story. And, so many people that are listening aspire to be successful like me, like you. And
Mhm.
I want listeners to know that it absolutely is
Mhm.
possible. But I want
Yes.
to circle back to something that Dixie said at the beginning. She's a successful woman. She could have paid someone to mow her grass, but she was mowing her grass.
Mhm. Mm.
There is a grit that it
Mhm.
takes to do this. And when I see people out there that are, jumping into the wedding industry really fast and within 3 years they're gone. It's because honestly, they just didn't have the grit to do what it takes. And it is
Mhm.
grueling. It is hard. Success is not promised. It just isn't. And if you think that the venue ownership is a cash cow and just because you bought a big property and it happens to have a venue barn on it, that it's going to work out for you, that is not promised. It is
Mhm.
not. And I really think we were talking about this before we started recording today, the kind of people that Dixie and I work with. And she said the same thing that I say to a lot of my clients is you're hiring me to so you could learn from my mistakes.
That's right.
Literally, I'm 10xing your business because speed is where it's at. You have to get making money as fast as possible, or you've got to pay that mortgage. Not everyone can buy a venue with cash, not everyone can sustain it indefinitely, right? And so it's speed. And so hiring a consultant that's been there, I'm going to carefully say this right now. Right, Dixie? You know what I'm getting ready to say.
Yes.
Hiring someone that has walked in your shoes for a significant amount of time, you're going to get a different piece of advice than someone that is newer to the game, hasn't had enough time to even make the mistakes that Dixie and I have. And we have, because that's the way you live and learn. That is truly, the mistakes to me are as valuable as the wins. And so Dixie and I have been around for a long time, which means we've made more mistakes than most people.
The proof is in the pudding with us.
Exactly. And also, I always say this, it's not my saying, I don't know who says it, but listen to the person who you would like their pocketbook. You know what I mean? Listen to the people that are where you want to be. You know what I mean? Sit at the tables with people more successful than you, or maybe it's not even financially, but I'm just saying, be careful who you listen to.
Yeah.
And
exceed your own expectations every day and find somebody to help you who's exceeding expectations.
Yes, for sure. And that is willing to get their hands dirty, and do the hard work. There's so much about this where there's people that maybe they have a lot of money and they buy this and they think, I'll just throw money at it and it's going to do whatever. And, in some industries you could do that. In the wedding industry, it's not. It is one of those things where you have to be willing to get down and do the hard, dirty work to be successful. And then eventually you can get to the point where you are how Dixie and I were, where in my last few years of owning our venue, I was rarely there unless it was just a really, I don't know, a celebrity client or something that, we felt like it was really important to have my face there.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I wasn't there unless, it was Luke Bryan or Ivanka Trump or someone like that. I definitely didn't want to miss that. But it felt good to be able to know that I trained my team to be able to handle it without me.
Yeah.
And that obviously also takes a lot of work to get a team to that point. So
we go through a lot of bad eggs, right?
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Hire slow, fire fast.
That's
right?
a story. That's a whole nother podcast about how many we've gone through.
It is so true. Do you have any closing words for our listeners today? What would you like to say as an encouragement to fellow venue owners that are listening today?
Yeah. Don't be hesitant to reach out to people and peers. I know that's one of the things I really loved about the conference that we were at is it's so hard to find other venue people to support other venue people because they think they're going to eat each other's business or take their business. It's awful. The venue world is not great for support. So I think just making sure you find somebody who can support you. Almost every single venue that starts up needs support if you're going to make it. Unless you are the diamond in the rough, like you and I, and they just gets in and goes and makes it work and we stick to it. But that not everybody is not as fortunate as that. And I mean, and it's just, and nowadays with all the conferences and the constantly changing thing and the algorithm and the things that, how we've got couples who will spend $50,000 on an elopement, but also we've got a couple who wants 200 people and they want to only spend $50,000 on that. You have to have a plethora of knowledge behind you to navigate that and stay relative in the wedding industry and continue booking people. And if you do not have somebody to support you, you are backing up and you're leaving money on the table and the next venue is going to come along and undercut you and take your business.
Yeah.
So to have somebody who worth their weight and, to help you, whether it be, once a month call or just, 911, I need help. Help me navigate this situation. It's just, it's so important. And that, I would have loved if you and I back in the day when we started could have had that kind of support. And, here we are. I've been in the hospitality industry 30 years, and wedding venue ownership for 18 of those years. And now you and I why in our world, after being in it this long, we're just now getting peers in the industry that,
Yes, I
that are
was
really
alone
nice and
forever.
supportive. Yes,
Yes,
we were alone for a
yes,
long time.
forever. And, I started before, like, this is so weird to say, before there was cell phones,
In
and it was like,
1893, yeah.
oh my gosh, it was such a different world. And,
Yeah.
sometimes when I see people complain or, social media could be such a toxic, negative place. When I see the things that people say, when they
Mhm.
have every resource. Even one of my someone recently came to me and they wanted to consult with me, and I was like, I'm booked for quite some time, but what I want you to do is go listen to every episode of the Venue Success podcast. Is free education. You will go
Mhm.
to college listening to this. I did not have a podcast. I had none of that.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything. There was no such thing as venue consultants back in
Mhm.
the day.
No.
There just wasn't. And you guys have, and when I say you guys, I'm like listeners.
Yes.
I feel you. I know your struggle, and I'm glad that you're listening to this podcast.
Mhm.
First of all, just kudos to you. No excuses. You have so many resources. And so I do want to just also shed some light and love on the fact that Dixie is also a consultant. We are definitely not competitors because there's
No.
more people out there that need help than either of us can even handle.
Mhm.
But what I can put my stamp of approval on for Dixie is, number one, she has proven her success. She is a kind-hearted, generous person that is very willing to help people, and she's going to go above and beyond for you. And
Mhm.
she's walked in your shoes. And again, that is something that's really important for me. I'm always cautious about who I recommend as a coach consultant, and I mostly like to recommend people that know what it's like to pay a mortgage like
Mhm.
you guys pay, to know the grueling hard work of what it means. The elephant on your back. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
thing, that until you have carried that elephant, you don't know. You can theoretically understand, like, and know how a business works, but until you have felt the elephant on your back, you don't really know.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm sorry if I have offended some people listening,
Well,
but that
no.
is just the absolute truth.
It's the truth. And also, like, let's just touch on this real quickly. Like, there are people, hairdressers, my husband's a pilot. There are people who have to go every year and maintain their education to be
Yeah.
relevant and continue operating in their industry. Unfortunately, we don't have anything like that for the wedding industry. But there's no reason why people should not think to sit down and invest in themselves. If you're wanting people to constantly come to your venue or your wedding planning service or what have you not, and
Mhm.
continue to invest in you, but you're not
Yes.
willing to invest in yourself and your business, that's not right. You've got to be willing to invest in yourself
Yeah.
and take care of yourself as well, and to stay up to date and have the right
Yeah.
backing and everything that you need to be a good business owner. And
Yeah,
if you
and
don't, you're going to burn out
no,
and you're going to mess up.
exactly. You're going to burn out, and you're
And
gonna
it's going to be a
and
big
your
one.
mistakes are
Yeah.
expensive. Your
Oh,
mistakes
yeah.
are expensive. So when people say, "Oh my gosh, well, your coaching is expensive," or "I can't afford that," I am always like, "That's cool, but can you afford not to? Do you have 5 years to waste? Do
Yeah.
you
And
have
do
5
that,
years to—"
divide that by the days of the year and the weddings you're doing. That
Exactly.
you want to do for the longevity. Like,
Yes,
do the
it's
math on
not
that.
that much. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those things that people will spend money on what they value, what they think
Mhm.
is important. And I'm telling you, this isn't just, Dixie and I are booked up. So I'm not even telling you come book us, but I'm just saying it is worth it. And there are so many venue consultants out there that are
Mhm.
willing to help. Just vet them. That's all I'm saying.
Yes.
Just vet them.
Yeah.
But I really appreciate you being on the show today, Dixie. You are a beautiful soul that has done so well in your life. And I'm proud of you for being in Montana, enjoying the fruits of your labor. And
Yeah.
I had a friend, he was a previous client, and he messaged me yesterday and he said to me, it was not a lot of people could say this to me. And he was like, "I'm just curious, Tirzah, like, what is it in your life that causes you to not be able to slow down and enjoy your life?" And I just started
Shots
laughing.
fired. Shots fired.
I know. I was like, I told him, "Thank you." I was like, "I hear what you're saying. And
Yeah.
I think I'm busier as a consultant than I even was as a venue owner,"
Mhm.
which is absolutely insane. But he was lovingly telling me that I need to enjoy my life more. And so that's why we bought a beach house. We're
Yeah.
going to go there this week. We're going to hit pause and enjoy the fruits of our labor. And
Yes.
so if you guys are listening and you haven't taken a vacation or you don't have one on the books, you need to, because the grind never ends. And
Yeah.
we gotta pause and enjoy our life. I'm preaching to the choir.
Vendor and venue vacations, just for mindless, deep, soulful chit chat, is next on my to-do list, just so you know. So y'all be watching.
Mine too, actually. I can't believe you just said that. We need to chat.
Yeah,
We
for
definitely
sure.
need to chat. Oh my
Well,
goodness gracious.
yeah.
It's important. It's really important. So
Mhm.
anyway, that's all we have for you today. Thank you for joining me, Dixie. We
All
will
right.
see you guys next time on the Venue Success Podcast.
Thanks for having me.